MochaFootball.com's weekly podcast. This week, we are previewing the 4A East and the 4A South, and we also have Myanthony Starnes on here, kick returner, slot, running back, all-purpose guy from Sherwood High School to preview what the Warriors are going to be doing this year and some of the key players to watch, key things to watch for that program. So thank you for tuning in, and let's have fun. Okay, everybody, we're here with Damon Anderson. Damon, just give us your favorite in the 4A East and what you think about the division as a whole?
My favorite Paint Branch. Cooper is gone. He had a ridiculous year last year. Curry's gone. But I think the coaching staff and Nate Smith will have the untested kids ready to go and not necessarily repeat last year's season.
Right.
But enough to win that division. I've heard good things about quarterback Sabalos 7-on-7 this summer.
Right.
So I expect them to put up a lot of points like they did last year.
Right.
Maybe not destroy certain teams, but enough to win.
Right.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. I agree that they're the favorite, but I will say this. I think that when you look at Sherwood and you look at the amount of seniors that they have, and you remember last year, the thing that made Paint Branch special was not only the talent, but also the senior leadership that they had on that team. And then when you look at a Sherwood team, they have that kind of experience coming back. So while I agree that Paint Branch is a favorite, I don't think that the margin is as great as I think some people may make it seem. I think that Blair is a team that a lot of people are talking about, but I would like to see them come up and do a little bit more before I start putting them in a conversation with Sherwood and the Paint Branch. But I definitely think that the race is going to be between Sherwood and Paint Branch at the top, which it basically always has been for a while. But I think this year, I think it's going to be a close race. And Sherwood actually has Paint Branch at home this year. And I think that's going to be a key. When you look at Sherwood's schedule, they have, outside of Seneca Valley, the heavy hitters at home. And when you have a situation like that, that's going to be a key thing going forward when you're talking about, home field advantage in the playoffs and things like that. To get those games at home and to have your crowd behind you. And you know how it is being a QO guy. You guys have the Red Army. And, that home field advantage is off the charts. And when you have your home field with you in big games, it's always an advantage.
Agreed, 100%.
So what do you think about Springbrook, what they have going forward, and do you think that they are in any kind of position to challenge the top two?
That's a tough question. For a few years now, I've heard things about Springbrook that this is the year that they're going to break through, but
right.
It just hasn't come to fruition for whatever reason.
Right.
I know they have some talent down there, but for whatever reason, they just can't seem to get over that hump. However, I will say this. If I'm not mistaken, I think their forfeit last year cost them a playoff spot.
Yep.
Maybe off by one game, but even if I am, they literally missed the playoffs by one game. So
yep.
They're there.
Yeah.
But this might be the year. However, I've also heard nothing but good and positive things coming from Blair.
Right.
They seem to be, for lack of a better term, the sexy surprise this year.
Right.
But with that being said, they haven't had a winning season in, almost a decade.
Yeah.
But with that being said, Springbrook would definitely be my sleeper team in that division. No chance it's Blake. No chance it's Kennedy. Those teams are going to have a problem building an entire team, let alone competitive.
Yeah, and just to expand upon that, Blake, God bless him. They basically lost their whole team to transfers or kids just not playing this year. Kennedy, we all understand and know their situation. No reason to kind of belabor it here, but it's always been a tough situation that outside of maybe 2 years in the early 2000s. So, I mean, when you look at those two teams, I don't think that they're in any position to challenge for the 4A East crown this year, and not only this year, probably in the next few years. As for Blair, I 100% agree with you. I've heard nothing but great things coming from there. Coach Fields is a well-known coach in this county that a lot of people respect. Having the record that they did, while it wasn't a winning record necessarily, it was a great record for Blair standards. And they looked at, a lot of games. I mean, even the Sherwood game last year was pretty close, especially at halftime at Sherwood. A lot of people are looking at that and saying, okay, well, if they can put it together and, they have a few seniors returning too. They have a few guys returning that, understand and know the system. If they can put it together, they have Sherwood at home, and that's going to be a swing game. You really look at that early part of the season, you get Sherwood versus Blair at Blair. That could be one of those situations where Blair can, quote unquote, take the crown. But like you said, in my opinion, until Blair go out and have a winning season, be a dominant team, well, not a dominant team, but a winning competitive team week in and week out for a year, I'm not going to put them in that class with a Sherwood with a Paint Branch. I really just think that it's two teams right now. It's Sherwood and Paint Branch, and I think that game at Sherwood is going to be the game for the division, and it's going to be an exciting one. I can't wait to see it.
Absolutely. The good news for Montgomery County 4A East is pretty much, I think, outside of Blair, maybe, they all fall into the 4A North region, which is predominantly made up of Baltimore County schools.
Right.
And historically, they don't have too many state championship caliber. Baltimore County being historically weak, they might have a good team every other year. So the two top teams out of the 4A should get into the playoffs, assuming they don't flip up.
Yeah, and that's that's a great point. And when you're looking forward to, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but when you're looking forward to, the representation that we're going to have in M&T Bank, you look at that side of the bracket, you're talking about a Perry Hall, which is not a bad team at all. They almost beat Paint Branch last year. In fact, I believe they're up 1 or 2 touchdowns on them in the first half.
Great game.
Yeah, so, those are not bad teams, but at the same time, you would rather be in that side of things rather than having to go through Quince Orchard, Northwest, and Clarksburg. Or Suitland, Wise. I would probably bet my money on that side of things than, the one, those over there. So, absolutely, that's a great point. And it's going to be interesting to see going forward who can lock that top spot up. Because, when you're talking about possibly, 3 games to get to the state championships, 3 home games to get to the state championship, most teams, almost any coach will tell you got to get that job done.
Absolutely.
So, that they're not just fighting Paint Branch, Sherwood, and anybody else you want, whether it's Springbrook, whether it's Blair, they're not just fighting really just to get into the playoffs. They're really fighting for a really good spot to get into M&T Bank and represent Montgomery County in the 4A. So, yeah, that's a key game right there.
The Mass Jerk Beats.
We're here with Myanthony Starnes, running back, wide receiver, slot for Sherwood High School. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for asking.
First and foremost, you guys have had, the process of bringing in a new coach, the last 2 years, something that's not foreign to Sherwood. Talk about, bring me back to the spring of last year when Coach Griff first arrived at Sherwood. What were your first impressions of him? How long did it take for you guys to buy into the system?
Well, as a team, we're going to know that there's going to be new people coming in, and we're a family, and we established that a long time ago. We just kept it tradition, so it wasn't news to our ears that a new coach was coming. I've been dealing with new coaches ever since I've been in Sherwood.
Right.
JV season, I had a new coach all through the JV season. I had or 3 coaches. It was nothing new. Coach Greer is a very good coach, so I welcomed him with open arms.
How do you look at last season? Do you think that you accomplished a lot? Look, given the circumstances of, he came in pretty late and everything like that. Do you think that you guys accomplished a lot, given the circumstances you guys were in?
Definitely. I mean, he was a new coach. He came in with high expectations, and we all had high expectations in the beginning. He came in and he was like, write your goal up on the board. We had a meeting. He was like, write your goal up on the board.
Right.
And, of course, being the team that we are, we all said we want to go to state.
Right.
And that's what every team wants to do. But he told us, in order to get to state, you want to take it one day at a time and win the day. That's his motto, win the day.
Right.
So, I mean, we just took it one day at a time, one day, and we got to playoffs. That's pretty good.
Right.
For a new coach.
You guys bring back a lot of experience from last year, but you guys are also losing a talented running back and DB in a lot of spots with. How is the team gelling right now, and what do you expect from the guys that have to step up to fill the voids of like the Elijahs and guys like that?
Well, the team right now, we're all fairly conditioned. We just, trained during the off season since, December. So while everybody was still, playing football and stuff, we were training. We were in the weight room training. It was snowing outside. We was training. We didn't really care because, we had a goal. We wanted to go to states, and we knew what it took to go to states. We lost last year in the playoffs against Paint Branch, and that was a heartbreaker. But
right.
We didn't give up, so we just kept training. The advice I have to give to the linemen that are coming, I just tell them to work. You come to Sherwood, you come into work.
You talked about Paint Branch. Anytime people talk about the 4A East, they talk about Paint Branch, and that's the first name that pops up. Do you guys feel kind of disrespected about that? That they only talk about them and not you guys?
We like being the underdog. It's good to be the underdog sometimes. Against Seneca Valley, if you don't recall, it was all on local football, all in the newspapers. Everybody was favoring Seneca Valley.
Right.
Sherwood came out with that dub.
Right.
So, hey, we the underdogs. We respect that.
Right. And you also touched on the off-season conditioning you guys have. It's been noted throughout this summer and the spring, the kind of conditioning that you guys have been doing. To be honest with you, man, I think you guys got some guys shook, because, people have been, man, you see what Cher's been doing. So talk about that for a second, how that all came about and what you guys doing to kind of get yourselves ready and the kind of different things that you've been doing over the off-season.
Well, just like every team, we have conditions in the weight room. So we do, regularly bench, and all the time we have a leg day and we have a upper body day.
Right.
So sometimes we'll do bench and, arm press and all that stuff, and then sometimes we'll do squats and deadlifts and all that stuff. So, and then, Coach Greer, we got all new equipment. So, we specialized receivers and stuff, we working on the jugs on our hands. And,
right.
The lineman is with Coach Greer, teaching them some tips on the line and things that you're going to need to know against teams like Paint Branch and QO and all that stuff. So, we've been working this all season.
You're an all-purpose guy.
Mm-hmm.
Just specify what you do for the team and, what kind of player you are, just for the people that don't know your game.
Well, first and foremost, like I said, I'm all about my team. So,
right.
If the coach asks me to play any position, whether it's linebacker, nose guard, I'll go play it.
Right.
And I want to help my team out, and I want to reach that goal,
right,
which is go to states. So, I'm all about my team player. It's a time to have fun, which, I have fun sometimes, but it's a time to have fun, and it's a time to work. But when you get on that field, it's time to work.
Right.
In that weight room, it's time to work. Don't get me wrong, on and off the field, I'm a student of the game, so how you conduct yourself off the field is the resemblance of your team and yourself and your family. So
absolutely, man. Well, thank you for your time, man, and I appreciate everything that you're bringing to the table. And if all your teammates have your attitude, I'm sure that everybody's going to be doing wonderful things at Sherwood. And as a Sherwood alumni, I'm really proud of what you guys are doing, man. So keep it up.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, no problem. That's Myanthony Starnes, running back, slot. Anything that you need, he just said it. Nose guard, anything that you need. Have a great season, man. We'll check back with you soon. to the 4A South, they've had different things go on in the last that kind of shape.
Absolutely.
That's kind
That's an
of
understatement.
that's kind of shaped the whole landscape of this whole division. I mean, you know, you first look at Churchill, and I want to take it back a little bit, if you don't mind. 2 years ago,
Oh my goodness.
Churchill
I already know where you're going.
Churchill was up by, I believe, 2 scores over Northwest. Okay,
Correct.
they were going for the kill. Matty Callahan comes out from halftime and leads a comeback that I was at that game. I was amazed, right? That's when like Josh Gill started, you know, doing his thing. It was like a coming out party and everything.
Correct.
From that point on, right, they ended up losing that game. They ended up losing home field advantage, losing to Northwest, right? From that point on, that team hasn't recovered from that.
Not at all.
They have not recovered. If you really look at it, if they would have won that game, they would have had home field advantage in the playoffs versus a team that they beat in the regular season. And then now, if they would have gotten past Northwest that season, they would have gotten to QO. And you remember, I believe it was 2 years before that when they faced QO, it was a tight game. For whatever reason, it was it was a bad matchup for QO. So you never know what could have happened. That game, I believe, swung that program into a deep spin that I think that they just haven't came out of yet. And now we're hearing reports that they've lost a few key guys to private schools and things like that. What do you think about Churchill and where they're standing right now? And do you think that there's a possibility they can maybe squeak into the playoffs this year?
Playoffs? No. A winning season? Definitely. For Churchill, it's hard to do worse than a 1-9 season, and I can't see them going 0-10.
Right.
So they should definitely improve on last season. I literally have no idea what to expect from them.
Right.
If you would have told me at the beginning of last year they would have gone 1-9, I would have called you crazy.
Yeah, me too. But absolutely.
I can't explain it. I really can't. I don't know if it was an internal issue, communication issue. Even last year at 1-9, they were competitive.
Right.
But they just couldn't put up any W's. It was bizarre. So no. To answer your question, I do not see Churchill making the playoffs or even coming close.
Yeah.
But I do think they will dramatically improve on last year's season.
I think I agree with you. I think that they're going to definitely take a step up from last year. But when it comes on to the playoffs, I don't think that you got to look at it like this. Let's look. I mean, I don't want to preview. You know, going to the next week's. We're previewing the 4A West next week. By the way, but you got to assume that three of the playoff teams are going to come from from that division. Okay, whatever combination that you want to talk about. Let's just pencil in Northwest and QO into that.
Correct.
When you look at the last spot, the fourth team, you're talking about, any combination of Gaithersburg, Whitman, Churchill, Wooten, those kind of teams, Clarksburg. So when you kind of look at that situation, I really don't see how they can get into the playoffs. I don't really see with the losses that they've had over the last month. I'm not talking about even the last years. The last month. I just don't see how they can rebound from that and make the playoffs, make that fourth spot. But when it comes on to being a better team, I definitely think that they can. Now, Blake Dove was a guy that, and you being a QO guy, about the whole Joppy situation.
Correct.
He was Joppy way before Joppy. He was the first, I guess you can call it defection from Seneca Valley that created up, the whole uproar of transfers and things like that. And first year, actually, it was a good thing. They came out last year, he got injured. This coming year, he's going to have to step up and he's going to have to be one of the best players in this league.
Correct.
But it's going to be one of those things where he's going to have to prove to us that he's one of those guys. If they can do that, I mean, you look at, like, you know, they got some good prospects at quarterback, and I think there's going to be, you know, the guys that they're going to be playing quarterback for Churchill this year are going to be more to what they run. I think that they're going to be more seasoned and do, and so I might say that might be some addition by subtraction, but that unfortunately, you know, they didn't only lose the strip matches, so they're going to have to kind of plug in some guys in there, and hopefully those guys can produce. And my biggest question is, who's that guy for Churchill? And I think that's what they're going to have to figure out going forward. Now, Wooten, you want to talk about getting gutted? That situation, Damon.
That seems to be the theme for this entire division. It's a whole lot of unknowns, and honestly, that kind of makes it easy to pick a favorite or a surprise type team because it's a process of elimination.
Yep.
And Wooten falls into the second category. They lost a good yet controversial coach.
Yep.
They hands down lost their best player.
Yeah.
Their franchise in Diggs.
Yeah.
And from what we've all heard, they've lost several other players.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation. I literally don't know if I can pick them winning more than 4 games.
I got to say that's pretty much we're in my ballpark. I mean, if you're saying they're going to win 5 games, I mean, you got to have to tell me which 5 teams are going to have to beat.
Oh, I was being generous. Absolutely.
You know, you're going to have to tell me the 5 teams, and, you know, you're basically saying those 5 teams are going to be the 5 worst teams in the count, because that's the level that we're talking about right now. This, you know, I'm going to be 4 wins, you know, and I'm being generous with that too. I really don't see how they're going to be able to rebound from, like you said, you're not talking about just a guy that was okay and he caught a few touchdowns. You're talking about a franchise kind of caliber player, a kind of guy that probably could turn your whole program around, a Johnny Manziel-esque kind of guy, you know.
Absolutely.
And they lost him, and not only did they lose him, they lost several other key players of that team. And now they're sitting there. If you talked about Wooten in January, in February, you were talking about them in the same respects as some of the playoff teams. They, you know, honestly, we were looking at them like, okay, they might be that 4th team, you know. And now,
they were right there. They were literally right there.
Exactly. And now we're talking about them wondering if they can squeeze out 4 wins. So it's gonna be interesting. Yeah, like I was saying, we were talking about a team that definitely was in that playoff discussion, and now we're talking about them 4 wins maybe, and it just goes to show you. Yeah, I think that you know, Wooten is in a position that they're just gonna try to have to find answers, man. They're just gonna have to find a way to possibly band together. Now, what I can say is this: you know, anytime we've been in positions, we've all been in positions, Damon, where, you know, our backs against the wall and everybody's counting us out. We gotta, you know, all understand that these guys could band together, become brothers, and possibly become a team and possibly do something that we're not expecting. And I'm rooting for them to do it, man, because that'd be an amazing story. But we as analysts, we have to analyze what we're seeing. And what we're seeing is struggles coming down the pipe, you know. So, yeah. So, but one team that seems to not be struggling is Whitman.
Oh, yeah.
This is a team, when you're talking about fighting, when you're talking about grit, when you're talking about toughness, Whitman is a team that, you know, they've always been kind of on the verge every single year. They've always, you know, played teams tough and been in the mix. But a lot of people are saying that this year they could possibly break through. They got, a few people returning. I heard they have a pretty nice tight end. And I feel like, this might be one of those teams now with the losses of that Wooten and Churchill has suffered. I think that this is definitely the team that we need to be looking at in this division as the cream of the crop.
Absolutely. Whitman is literally, it wasn't even a question when picking a favorite for this division. Whitman outshines every other team in that division. You mentioned their tight end, Anton Casey. He will be playing on Saturday somewhere. We will see him on TV.
Right.
225 pounds. Obviously, he's going to be heavily featured.
That's a big boy.
Offense. Yeah, he is. And in addition, they got a young quarterback coming back in Smith, and they got a strong fullback in, forgive me if I mispronounce the name, Pitzenberger.
Yeah.
He's around 6 feet, 6'2", well over 200 pounds. I cannot wait to see Whitman play some games this year. I'm actually really excited to see what they're going to do. I'm so excited about Whitman. Not only am I picking them to win Montgomery County 4A South, I'm expecting them to be in the playoffs.
Hey.
Now, with that being said, that means they cannot slip up because compared to the heavy hitters in Clarksburg, QO Northwest,
right?
No, I mean they do play Quince Orchard. They have Damascus at home, but outside of those two games, they pretty much have to run the table.
Right.
But I expect.
And to clarify what Damon's talking about, some people might be saying, hey, if their schedule's not that strong, and that works in their favor because they should be able to have, good opponents. But what Damon's really alluding to right now is the fact that, you have to pick up points. When you don't have a strong schedule, sometimes it's harder to pick up those points that you need. So just to clarify what you're talking about there.
But, I'm really excited for Whitman. They've been well on their way. Coach Kuhn has built a solid program there. He hasn't had a losing record since I take that back. He has one losing season, but since 2007, it's been nothing but positive results.
Right.
I expect them to improve on last year's 7-3 record.
Now, let me ask you a question. You alluded to pitfalls, and let's exclude QO out of it because QO is a pitfall for every team in the state. So let's exclude them out of it. What potential pitfalls do you see in the schedule that you think that might come up for them, and do you think that they're built to withstand let's say a potential upset game and why?
Two potential pitfalls. Week 10, which may shape up to be a playoff game in itself against Blair.
Okay.
Whitman has that game at home, but as we talked about earlier in 4A East, Blair is a sexy pick for a lot of people.
Right.
And going back to what I said about Blair, this is definitely one of the games they're going to have to show. Another potential pitfall would be week 7, again at home versus Springfield, for the same reasons that I mentioned about Blair. Springfield has always to be on the cusp. They have the athletes. It's just either a lost game or an oversight administration that has cost them. So Whitman definitely will have to win at least one, if not both of those games, because looking at the schedule, I expect them to lose Quince Orchard and Damascus, and that's it.
That's it. That's absolutely. Those are two great games that you just pointed out right there, Damon, because those are two very capable teams. These are not teams that we're not talking about bottom feeders. We're talking about teams, like you said, with really good athletes, with really good players, and that could challenge them. The only thing is with those two teams is in the fourth quarter, and you just mentioned some big boys on Whitman. Are they going to be able to handle, the constant pounding that Whitman's going to come at them with? So that's going to be the interesting thing right there. But those are definitely two teams that I definitely would be looking at. If I'm a Whitman fan, I'm circling those two games right there and saying we have to win those two games. If we don't win those two games, we're not, we're probably going to be out of the playoffs. This is the first week in the books. Look forward to talking next week about 4A West. And thank you so much. That's Damon Anderson right there. I'm Kevin Grant. This is the Mogul Football Podcast.